Welcome to Two Guys and a Tiny Desk, a bi-weekly theological podcast developed by two seminarians to discuss big ideas on a tiny platform. You're invited to join us on a journey of self-discovery and transformation.
Hi, my name is Joel, and my pronouns are he, him, and his.
Hi, my name is Aaron, and my pronouns are they, their, and them. All right, so today's topic and discussion is, prophetic imagination, what does it mean, Dr. Reyes, to you, or what is your understanding of that?
Good.
All right.
Something simple that we all know that I wanted to share, and I think it leads to prophetic imagination, or just the imagination in whole. It comes from Mark 6:14, and it says, when he, Jesus, had taken 5 loaves and 2 fish, he looked up to the heaven and blessed it, and brake the loaves and gave them to his disciples set before him. And the reason I bring up this pericope, I think for me, it's prophetic. Jesus, with so little, is providing for those who don't have so many, with just, 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish.
So, Dr. Reyes, do you have a response to that scripture, briefly?
No, I'd have to hear a bit more on your thoughts on the prophetic. I have a different take on it. I mean, I would probably say that the prophetic is not in the loaves and the fish, because that just introduces a promise fulfilled. But the prophetic may be that there are the hungry there, and here we have an act being performed. It's for me, that's an imagination accomplished, right? Turned into actuality that's been forth and broken through. And we see that the Christ fulfills that role, in which the prophetic imagination now becomes into the actuality, the real. So that's what I see that scripture doing, because he's he's fulfilling that role. Where I do see the prophetic happening there is pushback against the empire that's going on, right? They live within a kingdom. They live in this specific space, and yet they're hungry, and they need to be fed. And there's that question going on. There's that piece going on that's pushing back at notions of empire, that's pushing back at notions that a kingdom should be able to feed their people. Maybe even questioning the role of kingdom there.
Thank you for that.
I'm hoping Go-Go spit some fire right here.
What I was actually going to say is that at that point, I think that specific point in time, to me, lacked imagination, in that no one came prepared to feed anyone. No one even had the concept of preparing, or even letting people know in advance to bring food. It wasn't a concept. It was just, okay, we're gonna fly over, from the seat of our pants, so to speak. And for Christ to do that still wasn't imaginative on the human level, because no one would think that 5 loaves and 2 fish can feed a multitude. I think it was only in the, as you said, the actualization of it, the physical act of it, did they see that not only could it be done, but it is being done, and that's what led to imagination, if you will. A lot can be done with very little because we witnessed it.
I like that. Yeah. I like that, because what you're introducing there is we have to experience something to say, wow, that is possible. We have to have some image, some visualization, some experience to say, wow, there is this possibility that we can do this that's being shown.
I think in modern day, people say, things are impossible until it's done. And that's one of those types of situations.
And so I think you're bringing the common notion that something can't be imagined unless it's revealed, right? So once we have that experience is like, man, that is possible. We can do it. It has to be visualized. It has to be conceptualized, developed, an image proposed so that it can actually happen. And maybe that's what we see in the Christ. He sees the possibility of the bread and the fish, the loaves and the fish. He goes, man, this is more than enough. We can definitely do this. But when you're looking at the actual, and the actual is like the physical world, right? When we see, people that go fishing, the people that have to make the loaves, they're probably saying, man, for me to make, 12 baskets of loaves, I'll be here for the next 2 days. Just working it out. It's not possible using those parameters. Nevertheless, that's what we're working on, a different set of parameters, right? We're looking at and moving in a different way. And what that is, how that's revealed is through the Christ, right? He makes it possible, and shows that it can be done.
But I don't know if that's a conception of something. I feel like it's something that should have already been there, that may have been there in the past, has been taken away. So is it more like a reconception sometimes?
Can you elaborate a little bit more? You mean reconceptualization of something that was there in the past?
In the past, yes.
What's missing that was in the past that you want to reconceptualize there?
I mean, talking as a black man in 2020, a couple of days before election, equality, justice, I don't know.
Freedom.
But
all those things.
You can't reconceptualize something that was never conceptualized. There's never been freedom.
But then the argument is that you're born free. So then to be born and then to have freedom stricken from you is the reconception. So I do agree with Joel on this thought that because it was taken away, the process of liberation and imagination is a reconception. It's not new, it's old, but it's being taken back. That emphasis on the history that it was taken, I think, is poetic in a way, don't you think?
I understand your point. My pushback is that the idea, I think being born free was an idea. But it was an ideal that belonged to people other than blacks and browns. So because it was an idea for blacks and browns, we have never truly been free. So to me, that was never conceptualized for us. I've never truly been free. I know how I feel now. So this is my idea of freedom, but I don't know what it is to actually be free because I've always been subjugated.
Okay. Well, then from a theological standpoint, what do you say towards that God created something with intention of it being free? So then the very birth of it is freedom at that moment in that experience, but then it's taken away throughout time.
I can see that, but to me, it's kind of like when you're born into sin. You didn't have a choice. So I feel like you were born not into necessarily slavery, but you were born into a freedom of unfreeness, if that makes any sense. You weren't fully free. What it sounds like to me, it's like freeness within the womb. But once you leave the womb, that's it. But you're not free in the womb in terms
You're not free in the womb either because your mother wasn't free.
Well, I guess it comes down to the definition of freedom. What do we count as? What is that?
That's just my opinion.
On like the most basic infant level, what's an infancy's freedom? That's a good question.
As all of you are talking, I think what you're really doing is defining where the prophetic imagination falls in. So Walter Brueggemann, in all his texts, his pieces were always fighting against ideologies, and we're always pushing or revealing what is real. And what is real is issues of social justice, right? When people say, oh yeah, there's freedom, but the reality is, no, there's not. So the prophetic imagination, and it's what you've been all talking about, is the fact that we're pushing against some form of ideologies because we're saying, okay, you're claiming freedom, or you're claiming that there is justice, or you're proclaiming that we do have a great economy. But the reality is, when you bring that into the context of very specific areas, it's not that case at all. And if you start opening up, you start showing, oh, wait a minute, it's only a certain stratosphere, a certain class bracket that is actually receiving this reality and maintaining this ideology so that they can stay there. But in reality, and they're just feeding us a dream, right? Right? The American dream, so to speak. So they feed us a dream, feed us a hope. But in actuality, we'll never get there. So the prophetic is that pushback of saying, let's not be fooled. This is not real. We seek true freedom, and I think Gogo has a point here. I think we're just trying to seek true freedom. We're trying to seek all this, but in reality, we don't have that. We're trying to rip open that ideology that we do, or that it's there. But it's, we're trying to rip it off and say, it's not really. And that's why when we look at they're bringing in the new Supreme Court person, Amy, I forgot her full name.
Coney Barrett.
Yeah. So and one of the Senate people says now she will defend the true nature of the Constitution, and that scares me, because when we look at the ideologies that surround her thoughts and ideas, and around maybe a certain Republican agenda, and I'm talking about a very specific Republican agenda, that's a real fear when they say that. I consider those ideological code words. And so then the prophetic imagination has to break with that and say, no, that's not true. Let's call it for what it is. Let's look at your symbols. Let's look at your terms. Let's be clear on what they are. And let's reveal what's really out there and show that what you're saying is not true. So I think that's where the prophetic imagination, and you've been talking about it just right now, that's what the prophetic imagination is. It's that cutting through the facade. It's that cutting through these ideologies that are that people kind of swallow because, maybe they're tired, maybe because they want to believe, maybe because they want that, $1,200 check, or maybe because they want to maintain their job, and just go into the day ins and day outs. Maybe they fear losing their Medicare. Maybe they fear losing everything else. It's the theologies that are whispers, right? That don't make sense. We've been fed the dominant theologies for so long. We can't think anything else.
Ooh, so the imagination is not even properly working right now.
The imagination's dead.
I've been asking myself the last couple of weeks, what if I've gotten this whole thing wrong?
That's a big question.
That's what I've been asking myself, because we have these philosophical, we have these theological, we have these religious conversations. I try to go into every debate or conversation assuming that I'm wrong, because it prepares me to listen more intently to the other person's argument. And then I find that if I am correct, their argument is glaringly wrong. And vice versa. If I'm wrong, it'll make itself known. So I always ask myself, I believe what I believe, but what if at the end of all things, I got it wrong? There is still that off chance that, dude, maybe you got it wrong.
Yes.
So those weaker theologies, those lesser theologies, they resonate with me, because I was once that lesser person. I come from an African tradition where it wasn't monotheistic.
Yes.
So being raised in this monotheistic, tradition now, a part of me still harkens back to when my great uncle was a spiritual healer, when we used to go over to his house and do what we had to do.
Right.
So now that I'm a quote unquote Presbyterian, it's like, I can't give Presbyterianism my whole heart because I still belong somewhere else.
Deep.
That lesser theology, that weaker theology is still in me. That's why I keep saying, what if I got this all wrong?
Yeah. Good question.
And by weaker theology is not meaning that it's weaker in the sense of the anatomy of strong and weak.
Just lesser, yeah. Lesser known.
The one that's less heard, the one that's being buried down,
Marginalized.
marginalized, left out, all of those things.
And it speaks to me even more because I myself have been not put down. I myself have been the one that's less than, the one that's been marginalized, the one that's been cast aside. So
you relate
it resonates. I relate even more so because I am the physical embodiment of what I am emotionally, psychologically, theologically, and religiously feeling.
In a quick snapshot, I want to say that this is as close as we can probably get to empathizing our ancestors being stolen and put into slavery.
That's exactly
to be forced to take on a new ideology and a new way to imagine or understand life. And I'm sure this right here, your testimony, is as close as we can possibly come, probably, I think, personally, because this just painted like a very vivid picture. You know, when you're saying you're fighting with a part of you that is still somewhere else or is part of something else, you know, it really makes us think, you know, is Christianity for me or certain things about Christianity? You know, and these are great questions that we got to ask ourselves, you know?
It's like choosing, do you cut off your left hand or your right hand? That's where I am. Because it's not just something I believe or something I've conceptualized. It's something that is in me. It's something that is part of me. This is what we practice back home. This is a member of my family who was like a big guy in the tradition, if you will. So to like put that aside and to just take up this whole mantra and run with it, it's like, again, do I cut off my left hand or my right hand? You know,
Yeah, you know, just as a side note, there's theologies in Latin America that are talking about syncretism as still a valid and powerful way of thinking about theology. And you also have another professor, I think, in the Chicago School, like Dwight something, I forgot his last name, but he has a book on Black theologies in which he's lifting up the necessity of maintaining the spirits and all of them to speak about something between the divine and humanity. And so I think there's a resurgence of that. I think we can't give up these aspects of who we are, because what they're doing is that it's sort of like they're cleaning us out, like, you know, in the hospitals, how they sanitize everything. It's like they're sanitizing us.
They're purging us. Yeah.
And what's funny is that
cleansing us.
That is the ideology of what we get out of our long history of Christianity, of purity. We have to weed out those things, weeding out of pagan traditions, and why we have that post-colonial movement that's coming in, that has been coming in for the past, 40 years. And even before then, liberation theologies really pushing at that and saying, no. There's something we can't throw it all away. You know, we can't keep sanitize and call it this. You know, that's what it truly is.
Right.
There's something more to it. And you know, that's why we have these pushbacks, this pushback culturally, this pushback of different ideologies, even this pushback of our understanding of the reading of the text. That there are different ways of reading of the text. It's not only looking at it from historical perspective, genre perspective, looking at it from the cultural perspective, but actually the inclusion of our own cultural readings of that text. Yes. Which shifts so much and makes us think anew. And I think that's what's been going on and continues to go on, and we have to continue pushing that One of the reasons why I hold to process is because of the religious, metaphysical, scientific pieces that are there, that I also include cultural pieces, and everything else for that matter. It's that huge complex of things. I says, we haven't done that in Christianity. We haven't done that in religion. Let's say that across the board. We haven't done that in religion. So to hold that position and say all of these, it's complex. And what happens when we start putting these pieces together, it introduces some really interesting insights. But it creates weak theologies. And nobody wants weak theologies.
Yes.
Because no one's willing. A weak theology forces us to deal with complexity.
Oh.
Right? It's a very so there's an author by the name of John Salas, and he says an image is so sensitive that if you were to change your perspective one bit, the image is gone and a new image comes in. So there's a sensitivity, or fragility to images. I say the same thing about weak theology. There's a fragility to it. That's why people don't want it, right? They want a simple black and white, something that stays. They can't deal with the fragility of something and really being and shifting, right? Of changing perspective to see an image that is constantly growing, right? And compositing and becoming even more.
Right. And different.
Yeah.
It really makes me think about like missionaries, right? When they go around the world and they're spreading their gospel, instead of forcefully projecting pre-agenda images, why not just enjoy the imagery from the natives or the indigenous people wherever you stumbled upon? Try to understand through their eyes instead of throwing the cross upon them, so to speak, and throwing the Bible at them. Because it reminds me also of this movie I watched called Silence. And it was talking about these Catholic monks that went to Japan. And Japan at the time, and to this day pretty much, is predominantly Buddhism. And so there was this clash between religions. And it was so brutal that they were killing the missionaries that were coming to Japan. And the movie demonstrates from a Christian perspective this endurance of gospel or Christ. But I love how artistically the director at the end put this kind of question scene. Like it's not saying that Christianity is the way, but is a way. And the man at the end symbolizes that. He says, I've made a choice pretty much. I know there's another way, but I choose to be this way. But then in public, I'm this way, because they were forcing him to take on Buddhism. So he married a Japanese wife and stayed and throughout the war. And his day-to-day activities were trying to assimilate to Buddhism. But he had this small, I think it was like a little Bible. And on his deathbed, he still had that Bible. So, it was symbolically expressing that he was still clinging to this maybe older faith or idea concept, but he was still living out this other way of life, kind of thing.
I want to say something as a missionary. I've done missionary work before, right? It was whatever. I've done it before, and I feel, and I don't want anybody to take it horribly the way I say this, but you're programmed to go do the mission. So you're ready to go there, military style.
Wow.
So it's hard, if that's the way you are, to change. You have to get out of that system or change the system in order not to go in with programming, destroy.
So the whole concept of missionary has to change.
I think so.
Have we considered that? Have we considered the arrogance of big religion Have we? Because in listening to the three of you just now, it's arrogant to presume that because the indigenous people pray to whoever or whatever it is that they pray to, that they are somehow less than. Because again, what if you got it wrong? You have to have some level of arrogance to go into a situation or conversation or a meeting assuming that you have the upper hand, assuming that you know better, assuming that your God is more powerful than my God. Because you and I are both here. So my God has served the purpose for me to get me to the same point where you have gotten. We are both in the here and now. So who's to say that your God, because you look the way you look and you dress the way you dress and you believe what you believe, is better than my God? Because both gods are serving the same purpose, which is getting the believer to whatever point of sustenance that they're presently in.
Right.
So it takes some level of arrogance to say, okay, well, you should convert to whatever it is.
Yes, I think you're right, Coco. This is where the post-colonial arguments come in. You know, you have Said in his book on Orientalism. You have the naming of Latin America. I forgot his name. His name escapes me. But there's a bunch of texts. They have the colonization of Latin America is another text in which Christianity or religion is used to shift or change symbols, the symbols of people, and to say that my symbols of God are stronger than your symbols of God. And by doing that, it's a much easier conquering of a tribe of people or colonizing people, because they've made the missionaries' God more higher than their own. And so, and this was a common tactic in missionary work and in colonization. You bring in the Christians first. After the Christians come in, then you have people that are going in and getting slaves and mining and populating and all those other type of things. So you always bring Christian missionaries first, because if you have their God, you have them.
Wow! I can't wait to watch the next episode of 2 Guys and a Tiny Desk. Don't forget to hit the like button